Hello friends! Welcome to another video from my series called Quick Thoughts On, in which I talk about different stories from the rich Star Trek universe. 30 years ago, a new episode of the 1980s incarnation of Trek, the TV show called Star Trek The Next Generation, aired, called Haven. These are my honest opinions about it. The Enterprise reaches the planet Haven, which apparently has the power to heal or something like that. It's not really important because we won't address it again. Something more important happens, which means that Riker has to stop watching his favorite hologram. Two ladies doing it together. Oh yeah, they have indeed shown us two women doing it. They really show us how to play the harp. That's what I call breaking the norm. Riker turns them off and goes to the transporter room, where a strange box is located. The box has a male face on the front, and the face suddenly opens its eyes, and millions of children wetted their pants. I know that because I am an adult and I wetted my pants. With the tea I'm drinking right now, of course. After delivering its creepy message, it spits out some jewels. Troi, who is also there for whatever reason, is shocked when she explains that the jewels are basically a wedding gift, and the person who is going to have a wedding is Deanna Troi. Betazoids still have arranged marriages, and Deanna was promised to the son of her father's best friend, Wyatt, what's his name? The reactions of the crew members are different. Picard asks her if she will stay on the ship with her husband. When her answer is negative, he congratulates her and leaves the room. Did somebody forget to say to the director that this room is actually the captain's ready room? And that Riker and Troi are actually the people who should leave the room? Anyway, it's time to finally meet the new husband and his parents. So we see Wyatt, and I don't know why, but I just hate this character. There is something in his performance which makes me not like him. He behaves like an angsty teenage girl. Then we meet the only good part of this episode, Lwaxana Troi, Deanna's telepathic mother. I love Lwaxana Troi. I also love Majel Barrett. There is something very special in her performances. Whether you watch her as Number One, or Nurse Christine Chapel, or Lwaxana Troi, there is always a huge amount of, let's call it, humanity in her performance. She seemed like a very pleasant person to be around, and I remembered how I was personally affected when I read about her death on the official Star Trek website back in 2008. For me, it was almost like I lost a family member that day. Anyway, I was absolutely shocked when I read a few years ago online that there are people who hate Lwaxana for some reason. From what I could understand, people hate her because of her arrogance, but I always took Lwaxana as a person who is just masking her own vulnerability with a layer of arrogance, which was serving as a kind of a self-defense mechanism. But it's just how I understood her character. Who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong, but that won't stop me from loving her. I mean, the first thing she does is that she tricks Picard into carrying her luggage, setting up their wonderful relationship in the future episodes. Picard gladly gives the luggage back to her servant, Mr. Homn, who looks like, well, there's no nice way how to say it. He looks like he died 2 weeks ago after being ran over by a steamroller and brought back to life using some black magic. Deanna talks to her mother, but she will do her duty and marry the girly man. Meanwhile, the B-plot starts. The governor of the planet contacts Picard with a clear requirement. A strange ship approaches their planet, and the Federation has promised to protect them. But no time for the interesting part. Let's take a look what the new husband is doing. I'm sure he's doing something manly. Or not. Deanna notices his paintings and realizes that that's the reason why he behaves so nervously. There is a pretty woman on all of the pictures, and Wyatt sees her in his dreams since he was a kid. And because he knew that Deanna is telepathic, he thought that this is her introducing herself to him in his dreams. I don't know a lot about happy relationships, so tell me, is it considered to be normal to start your marriage with saying to your future wife that you have fantasies about a different woman? Because it doesn't really sound like a good idea to me, but what do I know? Anyway, back on the bridge we see now the ship, which gets closer to Haven, and it's a Tarellan ship. The Tarellan race was thought to be extinct after they had a biological war on their planet. You see, there was a war between two groups of inhabitants. One group created a virus and infected the second group with it. And who would say it? They got infected too. Well, I'm sorry, but if you create a virus without an antivirus, you are way too stupid. It looks like a few Tarellian ships have escaped and flown across the galaxy, spreading their disease across the universe. You know, if I had a starship filled with different technical data and had lots of free time, I would, I don't know, maybe try to find a vaccine. But the important thing is that if they want to indeed go to Haven, the Enterprise has to destroy them. But also, if they are the last of their people, the Enterprise should actually protect them, right? Humanism and things like that. So this is a huge humanitarian crisis and a huge moral dilemma. So what do they do next? They throw a party. Yep. The party goes exactly as well as you would expect, especially when Lwaxana and Wyatt's parents hate each other, especially the two women. Wyatt, who is a doctor, tries to bring their attention to the real problem by offering to find a cure for the Tarellans, but it's not helping. First, Riker leaves the room, and later Deanna yells at everybody and leaves the room too, to find Bill, as she calls him in this episode. They meet in the holodeck, where Riker has a simulation of an alien planet running, and they finally address the huge elephant in the room, their former relationship. But they get interrupted by Wyatt, so Will leaves, and the two future couple kisses. Back in the B-plot, the Enterprise catches the other ship in a tractor beam and they start the communication. But who would expect? They find there an 8-member 1980s synth-pop band posing for an album cover, and the lead vocalist is the woman that Wyatt painted all of his life. The skinhead behind her is apparently her father, and they expected to meet Wyatt there. What a twist! Wyatt asks Lwaxana basically WTF. She gives him some explanation, but that's not important. Let's call it midichlorians, okay? Wyatt has meanwhile prepared a cure for their disease, so they couldn't create it for the last, I don't know how many years, but he found it in a few hours. Okay. He says goodbye to his parents and his future planned wife, assaults not Chief O'Brien, and beams to the alien ship. The ship has a very bizarre decoration. On the walls they have for some reason pictures of Joan d'Arc, a random guy, a crack addict, John Bon Jovi and Ashtar Sharan. But it's not important because when he turns around he meets the 8 surviving aliens, who I guess were silently standing behind his back. His parents are shocked when they find out what happened, but he decides to stay on their ship. So both of the plots can now have a happy ending. Wait, happy? Yeah, let's call it a happy ending. I was a kid when I've seen this episode for the first time, and I remember it was one of the episodes I hope I will never see again. Now that I have forced myself into rewatching it, it's not really as bad as I remember it. That's probably the most positive thing I can say about this episode, that I didn't hate it now as much as I did when I was a kid. The primary focus of this episode is a romantic story, and I don't really like romantic stories that much. I'm not sure why. Yes, I know that there is this stereotype that all men hate all romantic stuff, but I don't agree. There are many romantic comedies which I kind of liked, but this is one of the romantic stories which doesn't work for me. I don't know if there is some kind of an objective reasoning behind of it, or if it's just the fact that I'm not a fan of romantic novels in general, but the story element has no emotional impact on me. I don't like the character of Wyatt, so that fact doesn't help it too. But I, as a straight man, probably can't be the best judge for a likability of another man. The only thing I really like about this episode is the character of Lwaxana and her relationships to Picard and her daughter, but also to Wyatt's mother. As I said, I'm a huge fan of Majel, so I'm not objective on this one. There are some things in this episode which contradict other episodes, but I guess that's normal for a first season episode of basically any show. For example, we are told that Riker wants just one thing, to become a captain of a starship, which is in a strong contradiction with the Riker we all know and love from the later seasons. You know, the Riker who constantly gets promoted but still remains the first officer of the USS Enterprise D. There is also this strange relationship between Deanna and Will. In some of the episodes they love each other, in other episodes they are perfectly okay with the other person dating somebody else. In the end they get married in a movie which most of the people try to forget that it exists, but I would honestly prefer if their relationship through the years was at least a bit consistent. As I said, I don't hate this episode. That doesn't mean I love it, of course. It just means that while I expected this episode to have a rating close to 0, it will be a bit more. So, on my scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is complete garbage, 10 is a masterpiece, and 5 is average, I would give this episode 5 out of 10. It's an average episode, at least by Season 1 standards. But of course, as always, those were just my opinions. Feel free to write your opinions down in the comment section. If you like this video, don't forget to click that thumbs up button, and if you have some free time, feel free to watch any of the other videos on my channel, and I'm going to work on a video about the next episode of the classic Star Trek called Friday's Child. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time. Bye.